This week, we're wrapping up the volunteer recruitment conversation, imagining what a fantasy league for your volunteer team might look like, and inviting you to participate in the Sustainable Ministry Challenge that Melissa and Stephen will be taking on. It's episode 44. It could take you 6 months. We've got the need list, we've got this fishing pond, and we've begun to match up, and we think, you know what, Stephen would be really great for this, and Melissa would be really great at this, and Bryant would be really great at this, and we begin to match those up. It's only after that we make the phone call then, right? Is that what you're getting at, Melissa?
Yeah, actually, I would say not yet.
Yep.
Because I think it's really important that we rank them too.
Yep.
We recommend 2 different ranking systems, that each and every person on that list is ranked with a web ranking, a WEB, or and an ABC ranking, or 1, 2, 3, whatever you would prefer. That 1, 2, 3 ranking or ABC ranking is A is for awesome, B is for, our second pick, and third is our third draft pick. We really want to get the awesomes and the next best before we move to our third choice. Our third choice is really, if you're ranking somebody a C or a 3, it's in a pinch. We could use you. And then the WEB ranking, we call it web for short. W is with folks, especially in children's and youth. This is really more important. With kids or youth. Behind the scenes is B, or E is both, either with or behind the scenes. This means that you're not recruiting someone who has the extroverted, gregarious nature who happens to be miserably disorganized. You're not asking them to coordinate a major event. Mm-hmm. You want them to be with kids. Or you also want the people who are super, super organized, but aren't necessarily gifted with relational stuff with certain groups of people. So you want them to be behind the scenes, but then there are also those few people who could do either. So that web ranking and that 1, 2, 3 or ABC ranking is super important. So you know that you're going to be going after the talent, I think, in a way that is strategic.
Yep. Yeah, I also think the WB is so helpful in that, because not all volunteers are created equally, and not all volunteers are created with equal gifts, right?
That's right.
I would also, and this is part of the prayerful part, it's an act of discernment when you're looking at each of those names, and you're thinking in your head, where is God calling them to serve? Where is God calling them to be best utilized based on their strengths and gifts and their passion? And so really kind of prayerfully looking at that list and discerning and asking them to do the same thing, which I think leads to the next part, which is now you don't recruit by sending an email. Okay, that is the no. Okay, you don't. I sent out an email to 2,000 people and no one responded. Yeah, okay, they probably won't. Okay, we expected that. Yeah, that's right. However, what I do recommend is when you have all those people placed and you know who all you want to begin to recruit, I do recommend sending an initial email where you blind copy all those people. Don't let them see that there's a giant list of people. You put it in the BCC, and then you put your email address up top. And you say, or this is what I always recommend folks to do, is say, hey, I want to let you know that you've been nominated, because they've been nominated by someone, to be a volunteer with the ministry. I would love for you over the next 2 weeks to prayerfully consider how you might be able to serve in this ministry over the next school year. I would love to also set up a phone call with you after the 2 weeks to talk about how you might be able to do that and to figure out how God is best calling you to serve at this church. It's a short email, but what it does a couple of things. One, it lets them know that they've been nominated to serve in a ministry. The second thing it does is it gives them a 2-week window to begin to think about and prayerfully consider whether they are feeling called to do that or not. And then 3, it sets up the initial conversation to schedule a time for you to actually have a physical conversation with them about all the possibilities in the ministry and where you feel like they can be, where they can serve the best. So you don't recruit by the email, but you can start the process by getting people to begin to think about it.
Yeah. I'd also say too, it's really important that one person manages the effort.
Yep.
You can have people who are helping you in that, but one person really should be in control, matching up that person with the next lead, going to them, and if they say no, you move back. I think that's super important. I think another thing is important to understand too, what many of the recruiting styles exist, and to help you identify which type of common recruiting style you are, to help you understand how you shouldn't be. For instance, many times there's the beggar. The beggar is the person who's just begging people to join the team. It's not necessarily an ideal way to get people to say yes.
That's right.
You also might be the cruise director. And the cruise director is often the bait and switch person. They're the people who are painting this amazing picture about what an amazing job that you are being bestowed, and the privilege of working in this particular area. But we know that there's nothing perfect. It's work, right? And so you don't want to be the cruise director. You also don't want to be the controller. You don't want to be the person who is going to accept somebody's help and then do the work for them. It's extremely discouraging, and it's one of the things that I loathe when I volunteer, when somebody is just going to have me stand by and watch them do what they actually asked me to do in the first place, or have somebody undo what I've just done, even though I did a pretty good job. And then there's the Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger is going to be someone who's going to recruit someone to have them do it, but then end up doing it because they don't want to put someone out. They don't want someone to feel like, or burdened. So they'll just say, oh, no, never mind. I'll do that instead, because they don't want to possibly burden you. So I think it's important for you to understand some of the typical recruiting styles, to identify with one and really kind of adjust in a way that's going to be appealing, in order to get the right people on your team.
I think organizing that list up front, like you're talking about, Melissa, is incredibly important. I usually help folks set up a Google sheet. The reason why I like Google Sheets is instead of an Excel is because a Google Sheet will update in real time. So whoever you do have doing the ask and having the conversations besides yourself, you can all update it and see it all in real time. So we're not double asking, we're not double recruiting for the same position, and you can see all those results in real time, which is and it's kind of fun. It's like watching a draft board if you like sports. It's pretty neat to watch it fill up. So Google Sheets work great for that.
I think you're spot on. And I think really the reason why, like Bryant said in the beginning, start 6 months out, is that this takes time.
That's right.
This is not a system or a process that is worked and you snap your finger and you have all the volunteers you need. The reason why we say 6 months is because it could take you 6 months to get everybody on board and get them trained. So it's really a 3 to 4 month process, and you just want to make sure that you're not recruiting people at the last minute. That's why we recommend the 6 month out.
Yep.
Stephen, as you were talking, it gave me this idea of having like a fantasy league for your volunteer team. And I just really quickly went down that journey and realized it's probably a terrible idea.
No, but they're draft picks.
It'd be awesome. The other thing that stands out to me too is in those conversations, then once you've prompted people, even if that was by an email or initial phone call, to go into that with an attitude of it's okay for them to say no. And to get there, even if it's to a no fairly quickly, let's get to that. I think the ministries that allow people to say no to serving are the ministries that tend to be full of volunteers. When people have the permission to say no, they're more willing to say yes. And in addition to that, I think it greases the wheels then if they know what they're saying yes to. But just as importantly, I think we need to give them the permission to say no, even if they've served every single year, and you know that this year they're going to say yes again. I think we still want to ask, and we still want to give them the space to be able to say, yes, I have been doing this for 6 years, and this year I can't. And we say thank you. We are so grateful. Yeah. But I think that needs to come on a regular basis. And so even those people who've been around for a long time, for us as staff people or pastors in churches to just know that it's okay for them to say yes again this year. It's also okay for them to say no. And let's give them the space to do that so that they can then say yes to the things that are more important or most important this year.
Yeah, so I'm going to put a caveat on that from our old friend Dave Sipple. Okay. So Dave Sipple always used to tell me, Stephen, they don't allow him to say no. I'm like, Dave, you apparently don't work in ministry. He's like, no. He said, never take no for an answer. I said, Dave, that's insane. That you're talking crazy talk. Here's what he said, and I appreciate this, and I try to do it in this way. You go through your list, right? You have a first option for them. You got a second option. You might even have a third option of where you think they would serve. if you go through the list and they're like, I just can't do that, based on time or availability or desire or whatever, the last option is this. And if they say no to this, then they can say no, but I guarantee they won't. Here's the last job for them. Well, since you can't serve on a weekly or monthly basis or on trips or retreats with us, would you mind just having us in your prayers each week? Would you be on our prayer team where you just pray for us, pray for the ministry, pray for me each week? Can I put you on that team? I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to say no. And here's what it does. Number one, you got another person praying for you, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But number two, you are on that person's mind. That ministry is on that person's mind week in and week out if they're doing it. And there's something really powerful to that. If they're thinking about you and praying for you, and they might find a place in that ministry before too long because you're always on the front of their mind. And so it's a slight caveat, and it's a cheap way of getting out, but I think there's something good to it. So
yeah, I like it. I love it.
Simple.
I also think it's important for them. Brian, you said something too, like what are they saying yes to? What are they getting themselves into? I think it's super important. I think many people overlook the importance of a ministry description or a job description. And honestly, I think a well-written job description is probably the number one recruiting tool. Because when somebody asks me a blanket ask, like, hey, would you be willing to do, this? Would you be willing to be this? Oftentimes my knee-jerk reaction is absolutely not. Because I don't know what you're asking me to do. And I don't have time to get sucked into something that is going to overwhelm me. So a well-written job description that clearly outlines the expectations of the role gives a person to really discern if they have room to make in order to serve in this way. And so I think a well-written job description and maybe even a little packet of information about what the ministry is about, what the ministry core values are, what the ministry mission statement is, or the ministry, the goals of the ministry, et cetera, to get the person excited and understand where you all are headed as a team. So giving a person a packet to prayerfully consider before they say yes or no is good. Maybe you let them know that you're on your radar, hand them the packet and say, would you prayerfully consider this? You've been put on my heart as somebody who would be awesome doing this particular role. I'd love to take you out to coffee to talk about it with you next week, and maybe take them out to coffee to have a conversation with them. That's another little trick of the trade.
Yeah, and to include a commitment period on that job description. I think sometimes that gets overlooked. But is it a year long? Is it a school year? Is it a 3-year commitment to a committee? Is it a weekend?
How many hours a week? Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
It's always helpful. Do you guys wrap that up then with kind of like, okay, so let me give you a time frame to respond? Do you give them some amount of time to consider it and think about it? If so, like, what does that look like? How much time do you put in there?
That's one of the reasons why I like the email on the front end, because in some ways you're already giving them some time to consider if they're going to or not. That 2 weeks is more of if I want to be involved in this ministry or not. The conversation for me is if they, if it is a yes, hey, you know what, I do think I'd like to serve in that ministry, then it's a conversation about where, right? Mm-hmm. And so my goal is always when I enter into that conversation is to have a result by the time I leave that conversation. Now, some people need to check calendars, talk with spouses, check with family, all that kind of stuff, and that's just fine. My general goal for the end of having everything wrapped up with recruiting is by the beginning of April. To then have your training, because we always recommend, always do training, to have your training by the end of April. By the end of May. So you finish recruiting somewhere beginning to middle of April, and then you have your training by the middle of May for everyone. So that's the way I do it. Melissa, how do you do it?
Well, I was just saying that is not aggressive. I think that's fantastic.
It is.
I don't do it that way. I wish I could. But we typically we have everybody recruited by the end of May, and we do our training the week before the school year starts. So, and it's not just the school year, it's the whole ministry year. Summer just happens to, a lot of things don't occur over the summer. And so that's how we do it. But we are fully set, fully staffed and ready to go come that kickoff Sunday where everybody's back from all their vacations and we're ready to go. So that's how we do it.
Always ask them, and that maybe it's a different style too, but ask the person that I'm talking with, how much time do you need to decide? And then I take the responsibility and make sure to follow up, because sometimes they'll say, I don't know, probably 48 hours or whatever. I put that in my calendar and follow up. I think at that stage, then it falls on me to make sure that then I respond, because they're going to get busy and maybe they've thought about it. Certainly, I think if you follow the process, you're setting them up to really consider. But sometimes they may have just gotten busy.
Yeah.
You need to take the initiative to call them again.
And take that initiative. Brian, you just struck a chord when you said that, because there are a number of churches with whom I've recently worked where people have said, I put my name on the list. I said I wanted to be contacted and nobody called me.
Yeah.
That's really discouraging when there are people who are readily able and willing to serve and looking forward to that call. And when there is no follow-up, it can actually be discouraging and actually hurt the initiative rather than help. So I love that you follow up and you actually record it in terms of what their timeline is. That's great.
Yeah, the last thing I would say to that then is if you're working this process, is keep going until you're done. Ultimately, right? What we know is the process works. If you do something like this or quite similar to it, we know that it works. So don't give up. And if it's your first year working this type of process, it will get smoother year to year as you keep doing it. But just keep going. Keep going. If you get to March and you don't have everybody, keep going. If you get to April and you don't have everybody, keep going. If you get to May, keep going until you got the folks you need.
Right.
It does work, and you will have the volunteers in place at that point. As we get ready to close, I want to remind everybody we are going to start a quiz challenge with Stephen and Melissa. So please submit your questions to me, Bryant at ministryarchitects.com, with the correct answer. If you do a multiple choice, give me 2 or 3 wrong answers and 1 right answer. Identify what that is. Send those to me, and we will keep score with Melissa and Stephen. And this summer, they will, whoever wins will win a prize. I will identify that prize the day that we start the quiz. So that should be next week. In the meantime, you can keep up with me either by email or on Facebook, facebook.com/Bryant Johnson. Melissa, how can people keep up with you as we wrap up this fantastic episode on volunteers?
Yay! So I'm on Twitter. It's simply Melissa Rao. And you can email me at melissarao@ministryarchitects.com.
And I'd love to hang out with you over at 12stonespirituality.com. Email me at steven@ministryarchitects.com on the Twitter. And yeah, I think that's probably good.
That's probably good.
Yeah.
Folks, if you need anything from us, you would like to see a tip sheet on volunteering, any of those sort of things, feel free to email us, and maybe we'll post that on the Ministry Architects Facebook page when this episode goes live. Thanks so much again. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Ha ha ha!